I just finished the Blue Lions route of Three Houses about 10 minutes ago, and although we're still doing the review once I finish the other routes, I really wanted to just take a few minutes to talk about what I really liked, a couple of things I didn't like. I beat it on hard, classic. There will be spoilers, but I will have a section of this video that is dedicated to no spoilers, and then we'll get into them later on. Um, to start things off, I think Three Houses is a very, very, very good Fire Emblem. I think mechanically it has everything that I love from Fire Emblem, as well as adding a bunch of newer features to it. I think that the monastery is a really cool idea. I really like the way it's incorporated into Three Houses. I do think there are times where you spend too much time in there on a first playthrough. I can already see we're on a second playthrough or a third playthrough. I won't be spending that much time there at all. I'll probably just be doing seminars or just there long enough to get renown and then be done with it again and back to it. I think repeated playthroughs will go far faster. But I spent almost 84 hours on my first playthrough, which is crazy to me because it doesn't feel like I've had that much time to play it. But I really like Three Houses. I think the Blue Lion story in particular has been a lot of fun, and I'm very excited to see the other stories. I do think there are some problems with the monastery. I think that, especially if you recruit a lot of people, like I did with the Blue Lions, you spend a lot of time just talking to people. There's a lot of time spent in the support menu. There's a lot of time spent, individually going to each character to hear what they have to say about the big story beat that has just happened or the big story beat that's going to happen. However, that said, that gives you more time to interact with the characters, and the characters in Three Houses are really good. And it's something you can skip entirely. You don't have to talk to everybody. You don't have to do the supports. You can just skip the supports. However, on a first playthrough, I wanted to see everything I could with that story. And so I did spend the time with every support and to go talk to everybody. And I did every paralogue. And I tried to make the most out of every month that I possibly could. And you don't really have to do that. By the end of the game, my characters were extremely powerful. And even on hard mode, I didn't have too much difficulty. There are a few complaints I have that I will talk about a little bit further into this video when it comes to end game stuff and the difficulty towards that end on hard mode. But I'm hoping on my normal playthrough that I won't have quite as many difficulties with those particular annoyances. It's just a really solid game, and I could probably have beaten it in maybe 20 hours as compared to the 80 if I hadn't been trying to maximize my usage in the monastery. Because of the way New Game Plus works, which again I won't spoil in this section of the video, it will take a far less amount of time in subsequent playthroughs already, and I'm very excited for that. I think the game will just get better and better the more I play through it because of that. I'm very excited because of the utility, the ability to make anybody basically anything if you put the time in on it. It's a blast to go, I want this character to be this class, and I started up in the 10 minutes after I beat the Blue Lions route. I started up a Black Eagles run, and I have already said, I want this character to be this class. I want this character to be this class. And that's not even getting into the whole story side of things and wanting to know the answers to the questions that I have from playing the Blue Lions route that I didn't get in that route, that are in the other routes, and I'm very excited to learn that stuff as well. I need some more time to settle to know where I want to put it in my ranking, but right now it is in my top 5 for sure. It's just so good. The characters, the gameplay, the story, the music. Oh my gosh, the music. There are some amazing tracks that play, especially the track in the last map, the Blue Lions route. It is top tier. Some of my complaints are hit rates in this game. They're not as bad as, say, 6, but I got hit with quite a few 20s and 30s over the course of the playthrough, and I didn't miss that many high rates, but I still got hit by a ton of low rates, and it was really frustrating at times, where I would be, this whole term was perfect, except this character got hit by 4 21s in a row by a guy with silver knuckles. It's like, oh, okay, all right. Thank goodness for Divine Pulse. I didn't have to replay the whole map. I think without Divine Pulse, hard mode, specifically with the low hit rates and with the sheer amount of damage that magic units do, hard mode would be incredibly frustrating without Divine Pulse. But even then, there were maps where I used every uses of Divine Pulse and had to restart the map because I just could not get past it in specific times. had to reduce strategies, make better use to gambits. And that's cool. I like that there is that strategic element to it. However, I do think on hard mode, two things in particular are a massive pain. And that is the sheer amount of damage that magic units can do, specifically even to units that have high resilience. My Ingrid by endgame was a Falcon Knight that had 33 resilience, and she was still taking like 35, 40 damage from mages. They were one-shotting my Dedue. And some of that can be circumvented by the ability to grow stat items in the garden. But at the same time, man, that is ridiculous amounts of magic damage. And yes, it was the final map, but when you're dealing with that while also dealing with Mortal Savants that have, Thorons and and Bolganon, and also dealing with Silver Knuckle guys that can hit you 4 times, and also dealing with Silver Axe people and meteors and boltings, it's a lot, and I think all of that is fine. It's difficult, but you can overcome it. I just wish they didn't do quite as much. I wish that was like 30 instead of 40, because then it would be a little bit more manageable. And maybe I just needed to have trained my Ingrid different. Maybe that's my fault, But my other big complaint is the monster. I think the idea of the monster units is really cool. The idea of these big, tough beasts, right, that do a ton of damage and have some really interesting moves, but they have these barriers you have to break down, and that's really cool, and you can use gambits to be able to make them target specific units, and that's really cool. Where my problem comes in with them is just how many of them there are on some of the maps, and the fact that they have multiple health bars means that you're getting swarmed by a bunch of other units, while also having to deal with 3 health bars on this monster, or 2 health bars on this one. And in one map, there's like 3 of the birds that have 3 health bars each, swarming you while you're getting hit by a ballista, while you're getting hit by an arcane ballista, while you're dealing with a bunch of other units. And my problem with that is it encourages you to turtle. Because it's a doable situation. You can handle it. You just have to turtle up and take them out. And yes, that's what I wound up doing, but I had warp staves. I wanted to be able to warp a unit closer, but I couldn't get somebody closer without being in range of all of that. And it's just kind of annoying when you have that much bearing down on you all at once. And the only real answer is, okay, I'm going to have to take a turn to just step back and wait so that they can come to me. And it definitely inflated the length of some of those maps. In-game maps, I'm getting like 30 turns. It's like, oh man. And my units are really strong. I also kind of dislike the master classes in a lot of ways. They felt like steps back from some of the advanced classes. I think Dark Knight's really good, and I think Bow Knight is really good. But you get into like Great Knight, sure, it's just what you already had, but a little bit more movement, basically. Mortal Savant is a cool idea, right? But it took away a lot of avoid that you got from Hero or Swordmaster, so it's, it's just really odd to me that you get to the end of the game and you have these should be the premier classes, right? And they're sometimes not as good as the previous classes. I think one spot that really shows is your final class for magic, unless you go Dark Knight, right, and get a mount, is Grimory, which is whichever variant, Bishop or Sage, that you had before, but a combination of the two. So it doesn't get quite as much. It doesn't have as much of a punch as it did before, with the trade-off being that now it can heal twice as much as it could before, right? And that's fine. I just wish that there were a couple more options, and maybe there can be some more later in DLC, I don't know. But it just feels a little odd. And a big thing I noticed was if you want to rush down fists, there's not really a great option for that. I mean, War Master, I guess, but that's about it, And the fist weapons as a whole, there's a lot of enemies that use them, but there's not really that many variants of them as compared to some of the other weapons. Like, there's not a Brave Fist version because you can already hit 4 times, right? So there could have been a cool, weird version of it instead, and there's just not, which is unfortunate. With those complaints out of the way, though, I do have to remind everybody, having now just complained for like 5 minutes, I really, really like 3 Houses. The supports in 3 Houses, even though there are a ton of them, are some of the best in the series when it comes to specific units. I think that there are some that are not that great, but when you get into the stuff with Dedue became my favorite character because of his supports. But when you get into his supports with like Ash or Annette, you get into the supports between like Felix and Ingrid, the supports between Ingrid and Dimitri, and you get these characters that don't necessarily really like each other, but have to work together. And so now I'm going to get into some spoilers, right? I think it's really cool how at the end of the game, the characters decide who they're going to be paired up with based on who they have the most support points with. So I had pairings I was going for, and they chose completely other pairings than what I expected. I was trying to put Ash and Ingrid together. But because Ingrid had more support points with Felix, she went with Felix. And I'm sure the workaround is just only get an A support with one person, right? But I just think that's really cool that they wound up with other people because of that. I think it flows really naturally, you know? And with story spoilers on, Dimitri's story, as Dimitri is this kind of friendly, kind of nice guy that deep down is actually really struggling with his survivor's guilt and feels like, you know, he let everybody down that died in the tragedy at Dusker, slowly be having that revealed over the course of part one, and then in part two, he just is a beast. In part two, he has completely given up his humanity. He is striving to, you know, do everything he's got to do to be able to get revenge for those that are dead. Because he cannot cope with his survivor's guilt anymore. The last ties that he had to this world, the professor and Dedue, are dead, and now it is time. He is going to murder everything in his way. And having to slowly build him up out of that, the moment where a character is going to stab him and somebody has time to move in the way, that's so cliche, right? They have that time because Dimitri decides to let it happen. He could have stopped her and he didn't because he thought he deserved it. And so when that character does die for him, it just is like, hey, you don't deserve this. And the slow unraveling of his own guilt as he tries to leave again anyway, and you have to stop him. And Echo Rodriguez's words back, and him realizing living for revenge, living for the people that are dead is not the way he's supposed to live his life. Coming out of that circle that he had got himself trapped in, that endless loop of guilt and shame, and coming out of that to become a better character, now embracing the fact that he has to live for the living and trying to make a better place for them. It's just so good, and it all culminates in this wonderful moment at the end where Edelgard is true to herself and Dimitri is true to himself, and she goes to try and stab him, and he just stabs her. And then such an understated moment following where he goes to turn back as the crowds outside are cheering because he doesn't think himself worthy. And the professor has to grab his hand and drag him back out there so that he can be king. Because even now he still has doubt, right? I love Dimitri so much. I think he's maybe one of my favorite lords in the series already. And I'm really upset that now I've got to fight against him, you know, in the other rounds. But these characters are just really good. I think the classes are really cool. Archers are better in this than they've ever been because of Close Counter. There's so much fun to be had with the mix and matching of classes. Ash is a great unit. I think Dedue and Felix. If I had to say one unit that was like my MVP unit the entire run, it was Ash. By the time he got insane amounts of range and was critting everything, there was just no stopping it. He killed so many things for me. It's really sad when you have to, and I know this is all over the place, but it's really sad when you have to kill units that, you know, you couldn't recruit. And you don't have a choice when you're forced to kill Ferdinand and you're forced to kill Lorenz. I'm sure if I had recruited them, things would have been different, but I didn't. I didn't get to them in time. I ran out of time. And so that was the way it had to be. There is so much replayability in this game and so much to do that I absolutely cannot wait for another playthrough. Cannot wait to see the differences in the stories. And even after I've done all the routes, I still think this game will be replayable because of the idea of, hey, let's put everybody on a horse. Let's start from month one and put everybody on a horse. Or, hey, let's turn everybody into brawlers. Hey, let's do a reverse run where all the mages have to use physical weapons and all the physical guys have to become mages. And, like, just seeing how that turns out, you know? I love the way magic works in this game. I love the soundtrack. I cannot wait. I want to know how to get the S support with Rhea that I saw in there. The marriage options are really cool. Like, you can marry Sothis. How does that work? How do you even get that? I want to unlock that. There is so much more to do in Three Houses than what I've already done, and I cannot wait to see it. Let me know your thoughts on Three Houses if you've beaten it, or if you just don't care about spoilers, in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been Trey. This has been the Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum. Fire Emblem Three Houses has to offer.